Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin. Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, a serial technology entrepreneur who's launched 30 companies, failed at 20 of those, but scaled 10 of those to success. And I turned that roller coaster of a ride into my book. It's called Fail Hard, Win Big. And this is where I teach people how to turn failure into your biggest competitive advantage and how custom software played a defining role in every win. Now I'm the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We are a nearshore software engineering firm. And today I am joined by Michel Floyd, who is a fractional CTO for multiple companies, who's in the northern part of California with a nice background of the woods there. Michel, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
You bet. If you would, Michel, please give our listeners a couple-minute overview of the journey of your career.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one. I started off going to school at MIT and studying aeronautics and astronautics, and back in the late 70s, early 80s, and got my all my degrees there, and moved out to Silicon Valley, joined a startup, and quickly evolved into a software product manager and then development manager. And ultimately that company went public, and I started doing other things and making the rounds of various software companies in Silicon Valley. So I've also spent time abroad, working abroad in France. I grew up in Africa and Central America and Europe. So it's just like going back to my roots when I went over to France for a while. But now I found myself out here in Truckee, where I've gone from being a full-time overemployed CTO and to becoming a fractional CTO for a number of companies and consulting and for various organizations, which is much more in tune with my lifestyle at this point in my career.
Well, I know you said you're a ski instructor as well, and you keep trying to retire, but they keep pulling you back in.
Yeah, basically. All right. So in the winter's coming. We don't see any snow on the trees behind us yet, but it'll. We had some about a week ago, and we're looking forward to another glorious ski season up here in Tahoe. And that's that pretty much occupies me on the weekends and on the holidays and times when all the visitors come on up here.
So you described yourself as a overworked full-time CTO that moved to be a fractional CTO. Talk about the differences and the pros and cons. You currently support 5 different companies, 5 different projects, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The pros are that I have a lot fewer meetings because I'm always. I mean, I just remember my calendar just being wall-to-wall meetings because everyone wanted me in something. And as a fractional CTO, my time is much more my own. I'm not expected to be full-time for any given company. And as it happens, there's ebbs and flows in the development cycles of these different organizations. And I take advantage of that. Sometimes I'm working hard for one organization, but the other ones are quiet, and vice versa. From time to time, I'll get 3 in one day who are all asking for me. But fortunately, I've never gotten all 5 at the same time.
Are you still doing any hands-on coding anymore?
Yeah, I just dropped out of my editor about 5 minutes before this call. I was trying to do a pivot on one of the applications I'm building.
And so it sounds like you like the freedom of being a fractional CTO with multiple companies versus, once again, and if I'm using your words incorrectly, an overworked full-time CTO versus fractional. Does it get overwhelming having 5 different development teams and 5 different projects and challenges there along with that?
I kind of enjoy it. It's, I treat it as a portfolio, and it's actually less time than what, a full-time CTO job was altogether, because the expectations on the fractional side are lower, of course. Although, one of these companies may take off at some point, and then I'll have to figure out how to handle the extra load or give it over to a full-time CTO.
Now, how have you gone about obtaining fractional CTO clients?
Mostly word of mouth. In fact, all word of mouth. And then my wife got me into 2 of them. So, and then my daughter's responsible for another one. So there's a family connection. And yeah, I mean, I keep my customers happy. I do interesting things for them, and they keep coming back, or as they move from company to company, then they bring me into their new projects.
Now, what stage are most of these companies? Are they pre-seed? Are they Series A, B, C? What's a typical stage of the companies you work?
Two that are pre-seed, one which is seed, one which is an established company, which I'm just really doing consulting for, not a fractional CTO role. And then no, there's another one. There's three pre-seeds. So three pre-seeds, one seed, and one established operation.
So on the pre-seed clients, do they often try to get you to work for equity versus straight pay?
I do deals where I'll take an equity stake along with salary, and sometimes the salary is deferred for in exchange for a larger equity stake. Yeah, so I've got some equity only deals, and some salary only deals, basically.
Has that, when you have the equity, has that burned you? Has that been good? Has that been bad, or to be determined?
To be determined.
Gotcha.
The portfolio is still kind of young, so I don't really have none of these companies have exited or changed their capitalization structure very much. So that remains to be seen.
So, what short of, we don't need to know company names, but if you would tell us some of the challenges that the companies are having and the solutions that you're bringing forth and helping them execute on.
Well, the most common challenge, of course, of the pre-seed rounds is raising money, and as we all know, that's a huge pile of work for the CEO. And it takes a whole lot of effort, and sometimes a lot longer than people expect. And my job in those
I've
situations,
raised money many, 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 many times, and it always takes longer and is always harder than you thought.
except in my daughter's company's case, where they raised money before they formally incorporated, and they went from idea to first check in less than 4 months, and basically based on a demo, and which was kind of crazy, but
Well,
they've
she
done
needs to
really well.
write a book.
Yeah, she will. You can get her on the podcast at some point. She's quite extraordinary, but there's kind of the exception to the rule because they're in such a hot space in AI, and very interesting CEO. So it's just it's a great story. In fact, I just got back from a trade show with them in Denver last week, which was fascinating. But they're on they're basically a rocket ship at this point.
Well, but so funding aside, what are the challenges that you're being brought in for, and talk about some of the solutions you're implementing?
Yeah, usually it's to get an MVP in place for at this, pre-seed round is to get enough software going that you can start assessing product market fit, and that you have interesting technology to demo, that you look like you're solving a real problem, and that you can grow the technology platform into the market as it evolves. So that involves typically a lot of hands-on coding. That's what I was doing this morning for one of my customers. Was we're pivoting a little bit based on the we had the challenge of trying to develop a two-sided market, and we've decided to concentrate just on one side of that until we get critical mass on the one side to be able to attract the other side. We're refocusing the product down to just appeal to one set of users as opposed to two, which is a lot easier and probably what we should have done in the first place. But so there's some pivoting going on there, and changes to the product and everything else. That one happens to be both a mobile and web-based product, so it has extra technical complexity to it. But it's been running for a while and it runs pretty well. Now we just got to make it, basically try to hook the fish a little bit stronger.
Do the clients you work with normally already have development teams, or are you bringing teams in as you're helping them define the MVP and get it launched?
It's a mix. Sometimes I do the initial work and then start adding people to that. Sometimes I already have a couple people. Pre-seed, it's usually very small. The rocket ship company has gone from 0 to 7 people almost overnight, but that's they've been bringing a lot of people in from their networks. So that one's been really interesting.
So, in a perfect world, how do you like to lead development teams, and what approach do you like to take, and how important is same time zone for you?
Time zone. I've worked with teams all over the world, and in fact, for one of the companies I'm CTO for, we just had an interview with an offshore team and in Southeast Asia, and the time zones were just absolutely crushing, and just like it reminded me of why I no longer want to do that kind of work, because it just kills your kills your work-life balance to have to deal with late night or very early morning calls, and not to mention the cultural challenges that are inherent in that kind of occupation. I like working with either distributed teams in the Americas or same time zone, nearshore teams, South America. I've had really good success with Peruvians just by luck of the draw that I managed to end up with some phenomenal world-class developers who happen to be in Peru. And Peru is a beautiful country that I enjoy being in anyway. So South America is pretty interesting. But,
I,
I'm also
I
working with a team.
started my current company, Sonatify Technology, in early 2020 solely because I was frustrated trying to work offshore. And when you're in the startup stage, offshore is certainly the cheapest options. But when the challenges get complex, when you need US based people working with the development team constantly, you can get burned out really quick trying to only have an hour or two overlap in time zones. That was the whole thesis of why I started my current company, was to have that same time zone resources. And Latin America engineers, we've had phenomenal success. We do have people in Peru as well, and there's some great talent there.
Yeah. I mean, modern companies work much better on Slack than they do on email. Asia tends to be, email driven interactions as opposed to Slack and video conferencing and real time communications. Just async is just makes everything so much slower and so much harder. So if you can be synchronous, or at least with high overlap, 5 to 6 hours a day of overlap, then you're in much better shape than you are with being off by 12 and a half hours.
I agree. So, as a tech leader for multiple companies, what are some of the biggest challenges you're facing right now?
Well, as everyone knows, we're at this major inflection point in the world of technology with the advent of AI. And I wouldn't see it so much as a challenge as an amazing opportunity. There's been about 5 or 6 major revolutions in technology since I've been in the sector, and the last one before AI being really mobile apps. And before that, the internet, and before that, the PC, and well,
Remember when the cloud was this mysterious thing that if you weren't in tech, you didn't know what that meant? If you were in tech, you said all that means is it's somebody else's data center, not yours.
yeah. Exactly. So AI is just creating this incredible set of opportunities, changing the way that we develop software. And I've never seen the pace of adoption of a technology go like this. It's crazy. Both on the consumer level, but especially on for developers and product uh, for product people. It just gives you a lot of opportunities to change the way that people interact with computers, and mostly change the way that you build software. And so like myself, I find myself coding individual lines of code much less often, and just basically saying, here, I got this runtime error, go fix it. Or I need a component that I needed a cup of coffee this morning. So I asked Cursor to make me a component that was similar to other components I had, and it went off and did that. And then I went and got my coffee, and I came back and it was mostly done. But, even at higher levels than that, the the rocket ship company that I'm working with is AI top to bottom, because it was founded in May. Everything we do is AI. It's just we're building an AI product. We're using AI tools throughout the development stack. Where we have AI DevOps. We have so many AI based flows in GitHub that are just in terms of now we're getting to basically automatically doing PRs based on Sentry errors that we detect, and catching these little bugs that are in production, and automatically suggesting fixes. We still have to review everything. We still have to be very careful, but just the overall development flow is radically different. And that's probably it's the biggest change in the last decade in this business. And you got to get on board and hang on.
So you're working with multiple different teams. You are working with different developers. How do you go? And I think that one of the hardest things about being in the software engineering world is there's a new shiny AI object coming out every other day, or a new version of something. How do you keep a team focused on, settling on a tool and using that to its best ability, as opposed to always trying to jump to the latest and greatest version? Or how have you managed that, especially with the challenge of different companies, different teams?
Yeah, it's a situation where you're always learning, and I don't think you can, settle on a tool and be there for more than, in the AI area, like you can't do it for more than 3 months before something has completely altered your perspective. So all the developers that I'm working with now are exploring stuff all the time because it's just, what we were doing in May has nothing to do with what we're doing in October in terms of the depth of the tool set and what we're able to do. And just the thinking of it, just the change in mindset, like how am I going to approach this problem? You really have to be, it's almost like being back in college when you're taking all your first courses and you have no idea what's going on. And you're sitting there, learning 40, 50 hours a week. It's kind of like that, but you're also developing at the same time. So I don't think there's any chance for someone who just basically says, okay, we're going to fix the tool set for a year, and just work with that. You're just going to be lapped. So we just have very smart people who are looking at, they may be new shiny objects, but some of them are really fantastic. And some of them you try them a little bit and say, no, that's not for me. But, change is just absolutely supersonic, and you got to be able to keep current on a completely different level than was the case with even the Node ecosystem and React and all that kind of stuff, which evolved incredibly rapidly. So, you got to be very open-minded, in my estimation.
Michel, you have been a seasoned veteran in the industry. Every report you read out there talks about how 95% of generative AI pilots at companies are failing, having negative ROI. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a huge difference between bolting on AI to an established ecosystem and really rethinking your world with it. I think it's just very hard to bolt on. You have a big code base and you have a lot of work to do. It's just, and you have people who are not, really in a very nimble mindset trying to do it. Like, even if you take your proposition earlier that maybe, you should settle down on a set of tools and work with that for a while, that's going to ultimately lead to failure because you're going to be behind. And there's tools that you adopt and solidify on early on will be dusted in 6 months, and your project will fail because the world has evolved that quickly. I think it's just, it's really challenging for large corporations to adapt. You saw companies that took 10 years to get on the cloud. A lot of companies are still not on it. And, that was a pace of adoption that is much slower than what's happening with AI. So if you had trouble getting onto the cloud, you're going to have real trouble getting. But one of my friends and former colleagues, Umberto Modelli, had a really good perspective on this recently, where he said that, if you're thinking about AI as a cost cutting move, to get savings, you're really thinking about it the wrong way. You should be thinking about it as rocket fuel, and get your ship to go further, like jettison all the people who are flying it. You can just do so much more, so much faster, that saying, okay, we're just going to get rid of all the, half the people and let the the rest of the people, pick up the slack. It's just a waste. The opportunity is so big that, you need to grab it with both hands and run with it. I mean, obviously the very financially focused people are going to think of it as primarily a cost saving move. But if you think of it as a turbo boost, as just as an accelerator, I think, much happier in the long run. Challenge again, you go back to companies that don't like going fast. They can't go fast. They're structurally incapable of going fast. And for them, the cost cutting move is the obvious play. A lot of time it's going to fail, right? Because you haven't really changed the DNA of the company to be a fast moving system. You've just said, I'm going to get rid of some arbitrary half of the staff. I mean, some people may be successful, but I don't think that's going to be the innovators and the people who really excel. Those people are going to, maximize their growth rather than minimize their costs.
Well, Michel, thank you for sharing your perspectives and getting uncensored with us today. Especially like how you kind of had the comparison of from being a full-time CTO to the fractional role, which I think every CTO has that dream of, is it better on the other side or not? I appreciate you sharing your perspective. Before we wrap, what's some no BS advice you have for today's tech leaders who are trying to build, scale, or even just survive in these interesting times?
For me, uh, one of the things I look for the most in people, and regardless of level, is curiosity, right? It's curiosity means you're open-minded, you're interested in the world, you want to discover things about yourself, about your work, about the markets. And I mean, we live in some ways very challenging times, but in some ways very interesting times as well. And being able to learn. I mean, I think of any day that where I've learned something new is a good day. Also, if I get to ski or see the ocean, but if I get to learn at work, that's a positive outcome. we're on this meteoric, you know, evolutionary path of technology, and it's there's no room for the complacency and for let's do it the way we've always done. You got to be open minded and curious and like what is possible. You got to be careful as well because you can get yourself in serious trouble really fast. But just be curious.
Excellent. Michel, thank you so much. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you enjoyed the show, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, well, we'll just send it to your competitors. Might be the edge they're looking for. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters. See you next time. That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.